Welcome to our Purpose podcast. We are People and Purpose, dedicated recruitment professionals with deep roots in the HR community. We're here to help you prioritise people, along with a connection to your purpose. At People and Purpose, we believe that fulfilled people make successful companies. We're redefining recruitment by leading with purpose and empowering candidates and employers. We know your mindset matters, and once you master it, you can change your world. You can create the life you desire, build a successful career, and connect with your purpose for yourself, your family, and your community. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. You're part of a community of like minded individuals striving for personal and professional growth. Through our online courses, career coaching, and this podcast, we'll help you experience more freedom and fulfillment. Join us as we delve into a wide range of topics around generalist HR, L&D, Rem and Benz, industrial relations, OD, change management, HR technology, recruitment, and much, much more. By connecting with us on LinkedIn or Instagram, we'll keep you updated with new HR roles, thought leadership posts, industry discussions by subject matter experts, and updates on the HR market. There's always something new and interesting to learn with us. Subscribe now to invest in your future and career today with People and Purpose. And if you think anyone might enjoy this podcast, please share away. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're joined by a proud Aboriginal man, Mark Beetson. Mark's a seasoned Aboriginal Participation Manager with a proven track record in the construction and civil infrastructure sectors and non-profit organisations. So his expertise spans negotiation, coaching, contractor management, event planning, and team development. Mark is a skilled business developer and strategist, specialising in Aboriginal participation and creating pathways of engagement that benefit all involved. And as an experienced consultant, he works strategically to develop sustainable and lasting opportunities for communities. Now, NAIDOC Week was a few weeks ago, and it is a time to celebrate and recognise the histories, cultures, and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Often feels like a token gesture in many workplaces. We see brief acknowledgements, themed morning teas, and maybe a flag raising. But what happens when the week is over? Does the commitment to Indigenous cultures disappear with the decorations? We think it's time for change. It's time to move beyond performative actions and make NAIDOC Week a catalyst for real lasting change. And it's time to make it every week. So that's why I've invited Mark here today. He is an excellent person to explain why and how we can continue to make sure that we are recognising it all the time. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. No, I really appreciate being invited on here and obviously speaking about a subject that's close to my heart. And thank you for the introduction. Not quite sure I've done everything that you said, but I really do appreciate it. But look, first and foremost, just introducing myself, I'm a proud Gubbi Gubbi man. So my country hails from up in Queensland on Murray country. Which is, between the Pine Rivers, which is just north of Brisbane, all the way to the Sunshine Coast at the top there. First and foremost, proud Gubbi Gubbi man. Secondly, proud family man. So obviously I have a rather large family. So they're the two things that I'm very passionate about. And when we talk about Aboriginal participation, I'm probably one of the lucky few that actually gets to live out his passion within his workplace. So, for me, coming to work every day, it's not a hindrance, it's not a chore. It's simply I wake up and what difference can I make today, rather than dragging myself out of bed and getting to work. So because at the end of the day, the job I do answers to community, and that's something that I suppose I've aspired to over my whole career. So very fortunate.
Yeah. That's wonderful. But you've obviously pursued that as well, and you're good at what you do. Can you explain to everyone how the context of your role and how it fits into the organisation and what it does for community?
Yeah. So essentially, I've got to peel it back a little bit first. So Within my space, I work around Aboriginal participation, social inclusion, engagement, stakeholder management, all those different aspects. So within my role, I wouldn't be in this space, I suppose, to some extent, unless government started taking this seriously with regards to creation of policies and procedures and things like that, which New South Wales admittedly have started to do really well. Is there a long way to go in the journey? Always is, and we're always constantly evolving in that journey. But my journey started originally on construction sites, down on the ground, boots on the ground, but then wanted to make a difference in this space and then started to inquire about Aboriginal participation. It just so happened that inquiry fell in line with policy being made around the APIC policy within New South Wales government, so which was the first Aboriginal participation in construction policy. So when that came, my opportunity came. My career sort of just entwined itself with relation to Aboriginal engagement. So what happened then was I ventured through varying construction companies, and now I'm at CPB Contractors, which is the biggest infrastructure company in Australia currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so within my role, essentially, I work from start to finish in terms of engagement with communities. So work on engaging with communities, understanding what it is that communities are looking for in terms of when we come into an infrastructure project with design, construct, and then build and delivery. If there's opportunities that we can support community with, then that's the first port of call. And then secondly, after that, then we try and integrate that into tender submissions. And then talk about Indigenous procurement. Obviously, with these policies that have come in place now, Indigenous procurement has become a huge part of infrastructure and supply chains everywhere at the moment. So when we talk about that, the reason Indigenous procurement has now come to the forefront is because research was done previously on the fact that Indigenous businesses were 100 times more likely to employ Indigenous people. And with that Indigenous employment comes all the initiatives around closing the gap with education, health, well-being, and social economic value that's put back into the communities. So when we discuss all that, so we look at Indigenous procurement, we look at the employment, training, upskilling opportunities within community, but we don't just look at that. We also look at the legacy piece around what we can work with infrastructure within community to leave a legacy after we've finished project delivery. So and that's what it's all about. And then within my own organisation internally as well, what we do is we've got a reconciliation action plan. So we work on the actions, deliverables. We're always working internally with our staff to upskill from cultural immersion training to just knowledge around acknowledgement to country workshops, for example, and then educating people around our journey, our people's journey, the fact that we're the Aboriginal people are the longest living culture on the planet, and we're still very proud of that. But over history, because of reasons in the past, we haven't been open to sharing our culture, if that makes sense. But now we're finding that as generations go on, we're educating more people, and then more people are listening, if that makes sense. So so there's a lot around my role, but in saying that, and in an ideal world, my role would become defunct purely for the fact that my job is done and people deliver this as with business as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And because obviously that's your role, CPB Contractors, you're talking about it, you're looking at the education piece, not just internally, but then externally in the communities that you're going into. How do you think that other businesses that don't have it as a focus what could they do to bring it to the fore?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's several options and there's several ways to do things. Essentially, I suppose knowledge is key and knowledge is crucial. So starting those conversations, essentially within your organisation, we talk about educating people, which is a big part of what I do. So understanding, for example, simple things, your workplace, what country are you on? currently. What country do you reside in? Some of the stories around the country where you're from, some of the stories around the country where you work. So understanding that to start with, and then they're conversation starters as well. Like, for example, today I'm on Camaragal country, so where I'm talking to you from, and then I live on Bidjigal land. So, and I come from a Gubbi Gubbi country, and then I also have ties to a Wiradjuri. So, and from that understanding, that is a simple conversation starter, and then understanding some of the stories around that. And Aboriginal people have stories for everything.
Yes.
We have songlines. So there's some of the simple things, and then also too, just you can look at things like, obviously we talk about hosting events during the year, looking at specific dates that are special to Aboriginal people on the calendar and Torres Strait Islander people on the calendar. So we can have a look at those things and start participating in events, making people more aware of our culture. And then once you take those first steps, then you can start having a look at things like supply chain of Indigenous businesses, Indigenous employment, if there's opportunities within your business to employ Indigenous people. And then also, if you want to take that further, what organisations can do is start having a look at what's called a reconciliation action plan.
Okay. Can you break that down? What's a reconciliation action plan for someone that doesn't?
So a reconciliation action plan, which is administered by a governing peak body within Australia called Reconciliation Australia. So Reconciliation Action Plan essentially holds your organisation accountable for deliverables. For example, we say we're going to look at employing 10 Aboriginal trainees per year across the country, for example, for any organisation. So therefore, if you sign up to do something like that, then you're held accountable by that document internally. And then that's one of your deliverables that you can look at. If we talk about working with recidivism and programs, getting people back from the justice system into the workforce or just back into society, so to speak, then that could be one of your actions and deliverables also. Other things, talking about cultural immersion for senior leadership teams within organisations. So that's essentially what a reconciliation action plan is. It's brought together to reconcile people, to bring cultures closer together and to get that understanding.
I love that.
And it's a formalised document that over 1,900 organisations throughout Australia have. Probably more now, no doubt. But and it's a good document to have, and it's also guidelines on how we can achieve things as well.
Yes. Oh, that sounds cool. Can you talk to me about how you've implemented that with leadership before?
Yeah, so when I came to CPB, one of my mentors, Sharon Gray, who I'm sure she won't mind being named, Sharon was very much instrumental in CPB's RAPs, their stretch RAPs, their new stretch RAP that they have currently. So being involved in some of those actions and deliverables and with the senior leadership teams. So there's consultation that's done all around that. So talking, making leadership understand what we're trying to achieve, bringing them on a journey with our actions and deliverables, and understanding what we as an organisation can do. And that's the same for every organisation, regardless of what sector you may work in or what area you may cover for your work. So understanding, okay, what can our organisation be involved in to start with, and how can we make a difference with communities that we work with communities that we work in? So these are all the factors that go into discussions around senior leadership. And then consultation is done over a certain amount of time, and numerous meetings are held. The creation of a RAP working group essentially would be quintessential to developing a RAP within your internal organisation. And then what happens is that also creates champions for Aboriginal participation. Inadvertently, people who are interested in this and have a passion for this usually step up. And then some find that the more they're educated, the more they want to be involved. And it's a bit of a flow-on effect as well. And then once you have the senior leadership buy-in, then it's a flow-down effect from there.
Yeah, that's really cool. And in terms of like, how do you measure the impact of the work that you're doing?
So when you do have, well, one way is a reconciliation action plan, and
Yep.
what you do is you report on that.
Yep.
Um, I believe every 3 months, 3 to 6 months, Reconciliation Australia do audits of your reconciliation action plan, just to track how you're going as well.
Yep.
Because I mean, they've got a responsibility as a peak body who sign off on your reconciliation action
Yeah.
plans. Every organisation will be different on how they track things as well. I mean, we as an organisation track our Indigenous spend in our supply chain. We also track our Indigenous employment internally as well as externally with partners that we work with.
Mm.
So there's some of the things that we look at. And then also too, from a social license and social value point of view, there is reporting done on what it looks like for a dollar spent within community and how much value that is and what that
Yep.
interprets to. So there's
Yep.
been studies done within sustainability from the likes of KPMG, and other organisations where for social value, a dollar spent with an Aboriginal business extends to $4.70 within community.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have a look at all these things, bring them together,
Okay.
what our impact is, and what we're achieving.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like obviously like with the social impact, that's amazing. Like if you look at it from an organizational impact, where do you see the biggest benefits?
I think the biggest benefits of all this is that essentially Aboriginal engagement, social license, Torres Strait Islander engagement, um, it's starting to become business as usual for some organisations now. So, and it's also starting to change our thought processes. So we're not actually looking at it as an add-on anymore.
Mm.
What we're looking at it is, okay, this is something that we need to factor in. This is something that we need to think about. So whether it be from essentially, I know it seems that it's becoming more minimal these days, but using stationery, for example, what does that look like using an Aboriginal supplier to do so
Yep.
rather than using a big corporate who may come from overseas to do that? Therefore, the money's returning to our economy. It's
Yep.
returning to our infrastructure. It's returning to our Aboriginal communities. So, which is giving Aboriginal families benefit, and it all leads back to what we call closing the gap.
Yep.
Essentially, with government policy now, with government projects, and this is just only for within infrastructure. Um, every government project has a certain amount of Aboriginal participation involved.
Yep.
So we need to understand ourselves, how do we come up with innovative ideas to work with community that's going to support community? And what
Yep.
does that look like? And now the conversations are being turned around to say, hey, we need to have a think about this. We need to come up with new ideas. We need to, be better than everybody else around this, but we also need to make sure that we're delivering on our actions.
Yep.
And they're the simple conversations that weren't being held 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's awesome. And talking about closing the gap, have there been some studies done recently? Have you seen an improvement in that across the different areas?
Yes and no,
Mm.
if I'm being honest. So, I mean, the growth of Indigenous businesses, the growth of wealth within Indigenous communities is growing to an extent. I mean, we're creating more Indigenous entrepreneurs,
Mm.
which therefore in turn changes things from a transgenerational perspective of mums and dads owning and operating businesses now within Indigenous communities. Therefore, their children can see the benefit of them
Yeah.
working. Their children can see the benefit of them bringing food in, bringing wealth in as
Yep.
well. And then the opportunities now to go and get higher education is a lot more accessible as well.
Yep.
But at the same time, there's still a lot of work to be done, especially in regional areas. So, regional areas, if I'm being open and honest, um, you could nearly compare to third world countries to some
Yeah.
aspects, which is disappointing. But at the same time, I know government and people within the communities are working hard to rectify that.
Yep.
So it's still a long journey, and we are getting there,
Yep.
but there's still a lot more work to be done, whether
Yeah.
we like
Yeah.
it or not.
So we need to continue these conversations so that people can hear about, what they can do. And like, if you think about it, there's organizations doing work, there's government doing work. What can individuals, regardless of their position or background, do to contribute to that more inclusive and respectful workplace to help close the gap?
I think look, self-education or seeking out education is one thing. Within everybody's role within their organisation, do they have the ability to engage with supply chain? Do they have the ability to hire people? Do they have the ability to have conversations in terms of making it a culturally safe workplace?
Yeah.
Essentially, because the way we keep Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employment and retention and engagement of supply chain is essentially making sure that it's culturally safe first and foremost.
Yep.
For organisations to engage, for individuals to engage as well. So we need to be mindful of our language. We need to be mindful of our actions. It's not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people either.
Yes.
It's also Australia itself is a very diverse country, and we have a lot of cultures now within Australia. So, and a lot of Indigenous cultures from all around the world are exactly like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. We're very circular in terms of our culture, but we need to understand and we need to pay our respects accordingly. And I think within every organisation, people are a lot more mindful of how they act, how they talk, and also their actions. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you had a magic wand, what would you fix?
What would I fix? Yeah, wow. Okay.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. Look, I think first and foremost, I think there tends to be a trend around our way we approach Indigenous businesses sometimes and Indigenous health. I mean, look, we're starting to lift the stereotypes now, but essentially just giving more opportunities, I think, more than anything, for Indigenous people and communities to showcase their brilliance with everything that they do. The opportunities for Indigenous businesses to, give them a crack, so to speak. I think it's really important for us to understand the social license value aspect of that is really important. And sometimes people just factor in the commercial decisions rather than the social license decisions. Look, people are in business to generate money from a commercial aspect as well, but it's not just about that anymore. It's also that social value perspective now that we've got to look at, which is very important. So for me, that's probably the big thing. And then also too, I mean, this is probably an Australia-wide problem, but the housing piece, the accommodation piece, which is something that needs to be fixed, especially within Aboriginal communities. I mean, we have that many members of local Aboriginal land councils within New South Wales that are desperate for accommodation and things like that, just to raise their children. So that's something that really needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, that's a huge one. That's a huge one. And I like listening to you talk about how you go to work every day, you're fulfilling your purpose because obviously you're a very proud Aboriginal man and you have strong heritage, and being able to work within the space that you're passionate about is everything. And then you talk about obviously CPB contractors have a great influence on the communities that they go into as well. So being able to do that, and I think being able to talk about this day in, day out and use your voice, and us being able to help you get that out there more so is excellent. If you were going to give an organisation, so small organisation, one tip or one thing that they could do today, what would it be?
I would say a small organisation, how do I get involved in the Aboriginal participation side of things, or how do I start that engagement process? It could be as simple as some cultural immersion training to start with for your senior leadership teams, to start to understand the history of Aboriginal people, our culture, what that looks like. And then also too, that will give an understanding of how you can engage as well. So I would start with that piece first, if it hasn't already been done. And then what does that journey look like from there? You know, can a smaller organisation, do I have an opportunity for an Indigenous employment strategy or something like that? Do I have the opportunity to hire some people, or just even start to have a look at my supply chain as well? They're the simple things to start with, and then from there, everything else will flow on. Make sure that our organisation attends some events, gets the opportunity to go out to, you know, things like Reconciliation Week, NAIDOC Week. I mean, they're the two big events, right? But I mean, they are big on an Aboriginal calendar. But at the same time, you know, it should be that way every week. Yes, agreed. But you know, we are getting there. Each generation that comes through, there is more engagement as it happens. So, yeah, they're the small things you can have a look at.
Good. Oh, thank you, Mark. And like this conversation is really important. So I'm very grateful that you came on today. Is there anything else that you want to tell everyone before we finish up?
Yeah, look, I think NAIDOC week, I mean, it's keep the fire burning, right? So it was a couple of weeks ago, but, you know, don't just celebrate Aboriginal culture and Aboriginal people and get involved with community during those times. Look, there's no time like the present to get involved. I mean, we talk about the referendum that was just passed, and we talk about, you know, some people see it as a disappointment. I see it as a positive, because the fact that we had so many people vote and join that conversation means that the conversation is there now, and it's a piece that's not going away. And I was lucky enough, you know, I was raised with my father, very passionate about his people and my people. And essentially, you know, he got the opportunity to be an advocate for our people, and trying to do the same. I think our next generation standing up is really important to keep that fire burning and to keep those conversations going, and in a respectful way. So, you know, regardless of, yes, we can't escape our past, and we can't escape what happened with colonisation and everything like that. But in saying that, we can work towards a better future.
Absolutely. Like, and your father was an absolutely amazing role model, and so are you to your community, your family, the people that you work with, and you have a great impact. So thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you very much, Emma. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
No worries.